Welcome back, everybody, to the Natives in America podcast. This is your host, Benjamin Juan, and with me, as always, is Sky Ento.
What's good? What's I would say what's evening. Good evening.
Good evening.
Yeah,
it's a nighttime show.
Yeah.
All right. Tonight we have a very special guest, and I think a lot of you guys, anybody who's out on the reservation who has gone to Bobby Kibri High School, may or may not know this man, because I know him and I know of him, but I was unfortunate enough to have him as my teacher. So I'm going to have questions on that, but this is our special guest, Steve Danloe, Mr. Danloe.
Yeah.
Thank you. Say hello.
Hello, everybody out on the Tohono O'odham Res. It's so nice to be here. Thanks for asking me to do this with you guys. I'm excited.
Good.
I'm excited.
I'm glad you agreed. Like my intro to you is, I'm pretty sure my sister will be okay with me saying this, that you were her favorite teacher, and when you were her teacher, and I always looked forward to that. I was like, man, I can't wait till I get into that grade where I can have you as my teacher.
Yeah.
And then you left, or you retired. But we'll figure out. We'll get to why and the reasons for that. But
okay,
I wasn't fortunate enough to have you as my teacher, but a lot of people have. And
that's a double-edged sword, of course, because through all the years, I was the only game in town, and so students knew that they either had to pass my classes or there wasn't anywhere else to go, and they would tell their brothers and sisters, "You got to pass Danloe's class."
Mm-hmm. Nice.
So, and I don't know. I think my reputation as a hard ass was built up by old students.
Maybe. Yeah. I think I was always told of scary teachers, the ones you got to watch out for. I didn't know you were on that list.
Yeah,
I didn't know.
Yeah, well, but the ones, like your sister would say, that's not true. He wasn't. No. But other people would say, oh yeah, he was. But I guess it all depends on your point of view. Mm-hmm. So, but I did enjoy having members of the same family throughout the years. Yeah. So.
Yeah, both me and Sky have teachers as our mothers. And so we were kind of tied into the teacher community as well, so we kind of got to hear both sides of teachers and students. So, through my mom, I think my mom was one of those hard asses, and I would say the better teachers are. Just you can't just glide through my class. You're gonna earn your grade. And I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Maybe not when I was in the class of a hard ass, but it was like, afterwards it's like, they made me get that grade, and that's important for sure.
Mm. Yep.
Well, I think too, like your first year, you kind of progress as the years go on. So I think what I've seen is the teachers that do very well are the ones that stay and actually put in the time to learn.
That is really true. That is really true. I mean, when I think about my first year out there, well, I don't know if you want to get into that right now, or we can do that.
No, we'll come back. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, you're talking about how teachers change and grow over the years, and my first year out there, I had done my student teaching out at Sabino High School in 1978, and then and then I got my job. I think it was 78, maybe it was 77. Anyway, and then when I got the job out at Bobby Kibri, I had no idea. I had not taught for money, and I had not had my own classroom and stuff like that, and when I got that job and they sent me to my classroom, it was one of the old portable classrooms. Mm-hmm. And the counselor, Mr. Bob Christian, opened the door and he said, "This is your classroom." And he turned on the light, and the ceiling had caved in from the monsoons, and the desks were all flipped upside down, and there were papers and books everywhere. And I thought, I guess this is the way it's supposed to be.
Oh, gee, thanks.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't know any better. If I would have been teaching for 10 years and walked into a classroom like that, I would have walked back out and said, "You guys have a problem."
Yeah.
But for me, it wasn't a problem. I didn't know any better.
Nice.
So where did you go to school? Or
so I wasn't born in Tucson. I was born in Chicago, and we did a lot of moving around when I was little. My dad was in the service, and then we moved from Chicago out to. He was stationed at Williams Air Force Base up in Chandler, and we lived out there for a little while. Then we went back to Chicago. Then we came back out to Phoenix and moved. I went to a couple different schools in first grade in Phoenix, and then we moved to California, and I went to 2 different schools in California. So I had 4 schools in first grade. And anyway, and then he finally got a job. The problem was Dad couldn't get regular work, and he finally got a job with Western Union, and there were openings in Tucson and Bisbee, and he bid for Tucson and got it, and we moved here in '62, and so I've been here ever since '62. And I went to Steele Elementary School, and I went to Shoemaker Elementary School, and then my parents put me in Catholic school. I went to Mother of Sorrows for 7th and 8th grade, and then I went to Sal Point High School, and that's where I graduated from high school. Went to the U of A. Well, actually, I went to NAU for a semester.
Nice.
At the time, I didn't care for it just because I got tired of slipping on sidewalks. And my major changed, and there was no reason to stay up there. I was a forestry major, and I didn't like it.
You did like forestry?
I thought I wanted to be a forest ranger, and
cool.
I remember the very first, you take this introduction to forestry class, right? 1 unit. And we got into this class, there were 50 kids in there, and the professor walks in, and the first thing he said was, "I have drop slips here. Most of you won't be able to get jobs with this degree. So anybody who wants to drop." I'm not kidding. That's the way the man started the class. And I hung in there for about 6 weeks, and then bailed out of that. And
was that early enough to still drop out of the class?
Oh, you know what? Back in those days, you could go through half the semester and drop the class with no
problem with
no bill,
which is a good thing, except that I did that a lot. I have to say. But on the other hand, I was paying for my own education, so my parents didn't put me through. I had some scholarship money here, and then I had loans there and grants there, and so I felt like it was my business what I wanted to study. So I transferred back down here to the U of A again, and I was a business major for a semester or 2 semesters, and then what happened? I dropped out. I dropped out of college because I was spending money and I didn't know where I was headed. So I worked for a semester, and actually that turned out to be a really good thing because the job I had was very menial labor, and I realized this is not what I wanted to do for the rest of my life, and so I went back to U of A, and I was a pre-dentistry major.
Wow!
Wow! I know. So but the problem was you have to pass chemistry to be a dentist, right? And I did not get, science was not my strong point. So I had to change majors again, and my next major was, I was a Russian major, Russian language. Yeah.
Wow.
And I think
why? Can I ask why?
I think the reason why, well, it was a fascinating language. Difficult because it's a whole new alphabet and everything.
Yeah.
But I think what attracted me is it was a very small program, and the professors knew you by name. The classes were really small. You got to know all your fellow students, because how many people are going to take Russian, right? And they used to at least have a great Russian program at the U of A. Wow. So I did that for, a year and a half, So if you're adding up the years now, it's getting.
I'm like, where are we? How are you going to tell me?
How many times were you a sophomore? But I realized that the only thing I would be able to do at that time with a degree in Russian is work for the NSA or the CIA or something like that. Yeah. And I thought, man, that's not what I want to do. That's not what I want to do. So then I decided, how about if I could be a teacher and I could teach Russian, right? Wow. Well, yeah. Where though? Russian was being taught at Santa Rita High School. That was it here in Tucson. Wow. So, and then to make everything even more difficult, I met my wife to be, and I decided we decided we were going to get married, and I thought I got to finish a degree here. I got to
get something. And
so I changed my major a little bit to government, and with a Russian minor. Wow. And I finished up in May of '78 and graduated and got my teaching credential. But I was also at the time working as a youth minister at St. Pius X Church here in Tucson, and I worked a whole year after I graduated as a full-time youth minister, but there's no money in youth ministry, and so I told the pastor, hey, I want to cut back here, and I'm going to try to get a teaching job, and that's when I applied out in Sells, and I also applied to a school up in Montana, and I ended up taking the job in Sells, and man...
Did they offer you the job in Montana?
Up in Montana?
Yeah.
I don't remember if they offered me a job or not. I think they did, or at least they were interested. I think they wanted me to come up and interview.
Okay.
But I thought I have to pay to come up there to interview, but I've got the job that's been offered to me already out here, and that was an interesting thing, just the way I got in out at Indian Oasis. When I went out to interview...
Hold on.
Okay.
I know this is going to be good, so I'm going to turn this damn heater off.
Yeah.
It's bothering me.
Okay.
I got to turn it off.
All right. Okay.
2 seconds here.
All right. That's cool. I heard that roaring.
Yeah, I was like, is this going to be on the whole time?
Sorry about that.
That's cool. But...
Yeah, that thing clicked on and I about flipped in my chair. I was like,
yeah,
oh no.
Pretty loud.
Okay. I mean, it might become completely freezing in here, but
no.
I think we'll live.
I'm warm. I'm plenty warm.
Okay.
So I applied out there, and they called me for an interview, and so I went out in the old. I don't know if you guys remember the old boardroom. It sits kind of up on the hill. It's that old building that I don't even know what they call it now, but
which hill? Like
it's behind the elementary school, and behind all that parking area and the warehouse. It's up above the warehouse.
That was the admin building.
That was the admin building. Yeah.
What?
Or they by the fishbowl, what they call it. The fishbowl.
Yeah, it was right next to the fishbowl.
All I can think is, the only thing I could think of that was up there was the fishbowl.
It's right next to the
maintenance building, the fishbowl.
Yeah, well,
there's a little house right there.
Yeah, it's a little building. It's a real small building.
I think it's just a platform now.
You mean the building's gone?
It might be gone.
I think so, or it's boarded up.
Oh, that could be.
Wow.
Anyway,
okay.
So, and it's August, and it's so hot and humid, and so I go out to do this interview, and I thought I was going to get interviewed by the principal, and it turns out they're having an administrative meeting, and everybody is there. All the administrators are there, and here I am. I'm 23 years old or 24 years old or whatever, and I've never interviewed for a job. Really, ever. That was my first interview.
So you were schooling pretty hard then.
I'll tell you what, I was nervous when I saw all these people sitting around looking at me.
I bet.
And mostly the people who asked me questions were the business the business manager, and yeah, it was kind of weird, but
were they there for you, or they were already having?
Well, they were having their meeting, but because I was there for the interview, they all, interviewed me. I think Ann Francisco asked me a few questions too, because she was at the primary.
I remember her
back then.
Okay.
Yeah,
cool.
Yeah, she just passed away recently.
Oh,
I
really?
went to her funeral. Yeah. Anyway.
Okay.
So we, at the end of the interview, I got up and they said, we'll let you know. And I'm headed out, and the business manager stops me and he says, "Can you drive a bus?" And I said, "Well, I've never driven one, but I think I can drive one." Isn't that the right answer?
Yeah, well, yeah. I'm trying to figure it out.
I'm convinced. So they had been using vans to get back and forth to Tucson, and they had just bought this cruiser bus, an old Greyhound bus, and they needed a teacher to drive it.
So you were there interviewing for the teaching position.
For the teaching position, they said, "Can you drive a bus?" And I said, "Well."
So it was driven by a teacher on purpose. So it wasn't like, "Oh, we'll give you the bus driving job," and then.
Well, that's what got me the teaching job. When I said, "Yeah, I can drive a bus."
Sure I can. Of course I can. Look at me.
So I got hired, and then they said, we have two positions open. One is middle school and one is high school. I said, well, I'd rather have the high school position than the middle school. So that's what I got.
Why is that?
I just never.
I mean, you're 23.
I know. I know. But I had enjoyed working as a youth minister with high school students better than middle school. And what I was doing at the time, I was moonlighting. I was still youth minister, but just doing the middle school at church. So I figured I'll do the high school as a teacher out here.
Was that in town that you were still doing it?
I'm driving the bus. I'm going to teach full time, and I'm youth minister part time.
Wow.
So I got the job, and I'll never forget the first day so there was supposed to be me and I think he was a grant writer, a guy who wrote grants for the district, and somebody else. There were supposed to be three of us that drove the bus, so we would just take turns. Okay. And the deal was we wouldn't have to pay for the bus. All the other teachers had to pay to ride, but we would get to ride for free. So I figured, hey, that's money in my pocket, man.
Yeah,
I'm looking for every little way to and I'll never forget the first day I got behind the wheel, and it was just 4 on the floor, but you had to double clutch. So, and
I don't even know what that means.
Well, it means,
but it sounds awful.
It means you push the clutch in and go to neutral, let it out, push it in again, and then go to the gear. Okay. So it's there's nothing to it.
You get used to it,
except the first few times I'm crying in the gears, and I'm looking in the rearview mirror, and I can see all the teachers going like,
we're gonna die.
We're gonna die. we got a kid driving the bus, and he doesn't even know how to shift the gears. Anyway, it worked out fine, and I ended up driving for 21 years altogether, and I got the job out there, and I was teaching world history, free enterprise, and U.S. government, and tribal government, and state government.
Wow. I didn't know that.
That was the only class that carried through all my years, all 21 years out there. 22, actually, if you count the year I came back.
It doesn't sound like that was part of your education. Like, was that... like, oh, this is what I know and this is what I'm going to teach, or they're like, hey, we need somebody to teach this?
Well,
like your background.
My background was my degree technically was in secondary education with a history credential.
Wow.
So a social studies credential.
So it was there.
In terms of free enterprise, no, it wasn't there at all. So I was a page ahead of the student. It was really hard. The first year teaching is very difficult.
Oh, sure.
It really is. There were times that I'd be up till 11 o'clock grading papers and preparing, and I'd get up at 3 to finish, and and then drive the bus, and
then drive.
Yeah.
And then you get out
teach.
of the bus, and then you got to teach.
And then I'd get home and have to do stuff at church sometimes too.
Wow!
So it was hard. But I was young. I didn't.
Yeah.
What?
You can
do anything.
You can do it.
You do. What? You just figure out how to do it.
Yeah.
You just figure out how to do it.
So I'm gonna hit the break on we're
on the bus.
We're on the bus. We're already up to you're on the reservation and teaching.
Yeah.
But I kind of want to go a little back.
Oh, okay, sure.
I'm kind of curious where your mind was as a kid. Was there ever an idea saying, "Oh, I want to be a teacher"? Because it sounded like you're like, "Oh, I want this, I want that." Like I understand that completely. I'm all over the board too. But do you have any teachers in your family? Like anybody that
My son-in-law is a teacher, and my daughter-in-law is a teacher. But back then, I didn't know any. I didn't know any teachers. But you know what? And I never thought of being a teacher ever. Mm-hmm. But when I think back on it, I had some wonderful teachers. I mean,
that's good.
I had the.
How so?
I remember the teachers, particularly at Shoemaker Elementary School, and these guys couldn't have been making more than $3,000 a year. They weren't making anything in the 60s, and but they did stuff like we put on plays, and this is elementary school kids, but these guys put in so much time making sets, and we did Mary Poppins one year, and I think I was in 5th grade that year, maybe 6th grade, I don't remember. But they made this set where they had a carousel that went around, and behind the scenes they would grab a kid, put us on this horse going around the carousel, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we're spinning around, and we go across stage, and on the other side there's teachers taking us off.
What?
The other end, yeah, and that kind of stuff. They were so dedicated.
Wow.
These teachers, and I remember my 6th grade teacher, Mrs. Starr. Mr. Willems was the one in 5th grade that was so active, and Mrs. Starr was not as active in that kind of stuff. But I remember. One of the things that happened to me in 6th grade is my dad went on strike. Western Union went on strike, and that, it's hard. When you're a kid, you don't understand what's going on. You only know your dad's out of work, and and you're worried. And I remember. I don't remember showing my feelings or anything in class, but she obviously knew something was going on, and I just remember her being, she was a very strict teacher, but she could be soft when she needed to. So, and then in 8th grade, 7th and 8th grade, I had some great teachers at Mother of Sorrows. In fact, I still go out to breakfast occasionally with my 8th grade social studies teacher.
Wow.
Yeah, I do, Miss Brewer.
Did you know there were good teachers when you were there, or was it like you're reflecting back?
Wow.
Like, wow, they were good teachers.
Did
you know?
What a great question. No, I don't think I knew that. I knew that I liked them. I knew that they were. Their classes were fun to be in. They were engaging. And yet I don't ever remember any classes being out of control when I was in school ever.
They were in charge.
The teachers were always in charge, and that continued through high school too. I mean.
All right, then I gotta ask: was this about the ruler slapping times, or was they ruled with an iron fist, or was it
at Mother of Sorrows, the nuns weren't like that.
They weren't.
No, I never got smacked on the fingers or hands with a ruler. Or didn't have to kneel on a. 2 pieces of chalk or anything like that. But they were, they knew how to keep order, and we obeyed that. You know, I will say, in high school, I remember sophomore year we were in PE, and I went up to make a shot, and I missed a shot, and I think I said, "Oh shit!" And the coach was over there, and he looks at me and he goes, that meant you were going to get swatted. So I cussed one cuss word. Man, did he slam me to that? It hurt for a week.
But how do you do it? What was it?
It was a paddle with holes in it.
Okay, that's what I wanted to hear.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. It hurt. Oh, sorry.
Just point it up. There you go. That's good.
So yeah, it hurt.
You got the paddle.
I got the paddle. Yeah.
For an oh shit.
For an oh shit. That's what I got the paddle for. It never happened again.
You knew it when he pointed at you?
Oh yeah, I knew it. When he smiled and pointed.
I got you.
I got you. But anyway, and South Point was a great school to go to. In fact, we had a meeting recently. We're planning our 50-year high school reunion for next year, and I still see a lot of my high school friends, a lot of them.
Around town? Tucson?
Around town, but also, no, we socialize. We still get together. It's a very close, our class was a really close class, and we'll have anywhere from 60 to 100 people that'll show up. Yep. And we do it every 5 years. Yeah. I love it's planning a reunion is really difficult, which
I'm sure.
I think is why one of my disappointments out at Baba Kifri is that nobody has class reunions except I got give some props here. Class of '80. They've had now there may be some before that. I don't know. But class of '80 has had several reunions. I
was going to say, which reunion did they do?
They did the 10th. We did a 10-year. Now, I will say, at the 10-year, there were only 4 of us. I think 3 or 4 students. And then we had a 20-year, and a few more showed up. But we had a 30-year, and there were probably, 10 or 12 people that came to that. We actually had that at my house. It was fun.
Nice.
Yeah, and then we had a 35th. The 40th would have been 2 years, during COVID. And we obviously didn't have. And the class of '98 had a 15-year reunion some years ago. But that's it. Nobody else.
Interesting.
Nobody else has. And I get it. It's hard. Somebody has to step up.
Somebody has to do it. Yeah.
And then also, people get embarrassed because they don't look the same. Their hair is gray, or they've gained weight, or they've lost weight, or they've, whatever. But for us, for my class, and for me, a high school reunion is about getting together and just enjoying each other's company. That's all it is.
A shared piece of history.
Yep.
I like that.
Talk about stuff that you did, and it's fun. It's just. It's not a prom. I don't want it to be a prom. But some people think it should be a prom.
In my mind, I was like, somebody's rocking a dress and there's glitter or something down there.
It is. We do have at ours. We usually do a mixer on a Friday night, and then Saturday night we'll do a dinner dance at a hotel, and Sunday we'll do a picnic. But
that's great. That's great. So 3-day engagement.
That's what we usually do.
And then some people show up for just one.
Exactly.
That's nice.
Yeah.
We should do something.
Yeah.
I like that. All right.
Yeah. So I'm off the set. I forgot what we were talking about.
I want to take us on another subject.
Okay.
So before we go back to the reservation and teaching, I got one more area I want to explore because I didn't know this about you. The youth ministry. Was church, was that a big part of your life growing up? And then you just continued on into that? How did you...
Well, when you go to Catholic school, church is important.
Okay. I wasn't putting 2 and 2 together. Okay. So you were engaged.
But I actually, somewhere around my junior year of high school, I started working. I got a job at Safeway. I was a bag boy at Safeway.
Nice.
And I kind of quit going to church at that point because I worked a lot of Sundays because you got time and a half. It was time and a half, man. So and then when I went to college, I kind of didn't go to church very much either. But I found I missed it somewhere around my sophomore year of college. I started looking around for, exploring other churches, and I finally ended up back at St. Pius, and which was my local church, my local Catholic church, and I got into a young adult group, and there were some great priests and that ran this group, and they made a big difference in our lives, and that's another group of people I've stayed close to over the years.
Nice.
And they said, once you get into that, then they say, you really ought to try. Next thing I knew, I was on the parish council, and then
you're drinking the Kool-Aid.
Exactly. And so then you ought to try being, directing a little, one of our dialogue groups with high school kids. So I did that. Well, then they're sending you to training, and then so I ended up actually the church paid for my master's degree.
Wow.
I got that in Seattle University. It was a master's in religious education, and they paid for it. And
wow. Is that what it ended up being called? Like, what was your major, like your master?
No, it's master of religious education.
Really?
That's what. Yeah.
So this is like you're getting your feet wet as a teacher, but maybe not quite knowing. At that point, I guess that's true. I guess that is true. Yeah.
Yeah.
As far as like when you got the master's in religious education, was that like long before, like you were in college already, right?
Yeah.
So
they actually let me start that up there before I had my bachelor's degree finished.
Yeah.
But then I finished my. They said you've got to finish this bachelor's degree, which I did, and then I had to go back and finish my master's. I don't think I finished the master's degree until I want to say 82 is when I finally got all the classes done and all that stuff. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. So.
But are you done? Are you done with school, or do you see yourself still
going to school?
Yeah. Earning any other degrees?
No.
You don't see it, people, but he's making a face that I've made. I've made this face before.
It isn't. Right now my life is full of. I take care of my grandkids mostly, so that they don't have to go to daycare, and and so they get to know me. So I take care of. I've got a 2.5-year-old grandson that I take care of at least 3 days a week. Sometimes I add a little bit, and I pick up my 2 older grandkids from school a couple days a week. And as my daughter-in-law is starting to go back into the workforce, she's got 2 daughters, and so those are my granddaughters, and I'm getting them a little bit here and there. So I don't have time to go back to school.
All right. Okay, that didn't exactly answer his question. You say no, I don't got time, but have you at all explored the idea in your head saying, maybe I'll take a class? Like, have you fantasized about it at all, or like you're like, I'm kind of interested in going back to school? Like, have you thought about it at all? Or is it just kind of secondary? Like, I'm done.
No, I'm done. I think I'm done going to school.
That chapter is.
Nice. In fact, sometimes when I think about my days of being in college, I think, man, how do you do those things? Trying to work and study and take those classes. But again, I think part of it is because you're young and you just know that you
just got all the time in the world. Right?
I was thinking about that too, because I like going into college. I'm like, I'm gonna play some frisbee. And when I was in school, I never played no frisbee.
Yeah.
And so sometimes I'm like, if I go back, man, I'm gonna play some frisbee.
Out on the mall? out on the U of A mall?
I love that going back to school means I'm gonna go play some frisbee.
Yeah, but you have this idea of what it is, and then you do it, and it's not what you thought.
Yeah.
So it's almost like, why do I want to
Yeah.
keep going, or
yeah.
I don't know. I was talking about that the other day about how when I went back to the U of A, I felt like there was older males like getting that second wind of education, or they retired and now they want to do this study.
Different thing. I get it. Yeah,
but
you know, I will say this is a little off the subject, but on that subject of going back to school, I am amazed and so proud of how many of my students are going back and getting master's degrees right now. It's cool. It really, and these are people who have families or grandchildren, and yet it's important to them to go back and get a master's degree. It's cool.
I'd be willing to bet that you have a part in that.
I don't know.
For sure.
I don't know.
I bet.
Maybe.
Okay.
I don't know.
I bet.
You'd have to.
You're being humble, but I would bet that you had a part in that.
I will say that a lot of my ex-students have talked to me after the fact about, you know, those notes that you used to write up on the board and the way you wrote the notes. I always took notes all the way through college like that. So that was a good thing anyway, huh?
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay. All right. So I'm going to take us back.
Okay.
But I got a question to set it up. All right. So first of all, you said you mentioned the Montana job opportunity. Were those the only two places you applied, the reservation and Montana? I
think I might have applied in TUSD, but I don't remember.
Okay.
The problem. So the problem with TUSD is you really had to coach.
Really?
Yeah. Especially if you were a social studies teacher. You were expected to coach.
I kind of see that though.
I don't see the connection.
Yeah. Well,
I don't.
And it wasn't. I said TUSD. It's not endemic to TUSD because, you know. So this is going to jump a little bit, but one of the things I remember when I started out at Baba Kivari, and there were a number of teachers out there who were they just did not like their job. They didn't like their job. They shouldn't have been there. And I remember them they complained about stuff, and they would say, "You need to get out of here as soon as you can, Steve. You need to go, put in a year or two and then go find another job." So I actually did that at the end of my second year, I think, or it might have been my third year. I applied to like Flowing Wells District and Marana School District, and I had interviews, and in both of those districts, I was told straight up, if you don't coach, we don't want you.
Wow.
That may have changed.
I'm glad they did, though.
That may have changed.
You stayed.
Yeah, I did. No, I didn't.
Okay.
I didn't. Well, I don't even know if they would have. See, the only reason I was looking is it would be closer to home.
Yeah.
But Marana High School is a long way. So it really wouldn't have been that much closer. And by my third year, I was enjoying. I had a curriculum put together, and I was enjoying. But so I didn't. I just. And after 3 years, when you're tenured, it's harder for me to leave
over.
Because you start over and you have no protection at all.
Interesting.
So, so I just stayed, and the years went by.
I'm glad you did.
I'm glad I did too.
All right, so the bigger question is part two of that. And I think this is a key part that everybody who's going to be listening is hoping to hear this question. Did you have any preconceived notions about teaching on a reservation? Like you're educating, where you did, Seattle, U of A, and the religious education. So you had this kind of experience. And then you're like, all right, and I don't even know if you had a preconceived notion when you applied, but I'm asking, when it started becoming real, you're, all right, I'm going to be a bus driver, I'm going to go out and teach on a reservation. did you have any kind of like, oh, is this going to be this, or are they going to be like this? Like, did you have any kind of notions before you went out?
I don't. The only I had read a lot of of stuff, not about the Tohono O'odham Nation, but just I read a lot of books about Native American stuff because I was interested in Native Americans. But to say no, I didn't have any preconceived. I had no idea what it was going to be like. Until the first day of class when I got in there, and first thing I do, is the white guy coming into class, I'm mispronouncing everyone's names because I'm using a Hispanic, right? And they're just looking at me like,
this guy.
we got this new Midgon teacher out here, and he's screwing up, right? But I think what made the difference was that I could laugh at myself along with them. I think that made all the difference. You'd have to ask, some of my old original students from the class of '80, and those guys helped me a lot. They, your
first class.
That was my first class, yeah. And they, so not only was I my first year teaching, but they told me I was going to be the senior class advisor, and that meant I was in charge of senior trip, and I was in charge of graduation, and I'd never done anything like that.
That's the school that told you about it?
Yeah.
How did you said your first class taught
class
you a lot and kind of got you going? Oh, it was class of '80 too?
Yeah, that was class of '80.
These guys that are the ballers and coming back and meeting again. How did they teach you?
Well,
like what did they do for you?
They knew in their minds how they wanted the graduation particularly to go, and they knew they had to raise money, and so they planned. They were really good at organizing things. That class, I still, of all the classes, I think I probably keep in touch with members of that class more than any. Isn't that weird that they're the longest to go? The first ones. But they, I remember going. We did. I think we did Model UN. Somehow I got assigned that. I had to do that.
I don't think we even had that.
No. Wow. Nobody does that anymore. But I mean, that isn't even done. I don't think it's done. It used to be done at the U of A, and it was something that we had already signed up for the year before, so I had to do it. Bobo
in general?
The teacher who I took her place had signed us up for it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So you were already...
Yeah, so I had to do it.
Wow.
And one of the things that we had to do is we had to go in a couple of times to prepare, and it always meant that you were coming home at 11 o'clock, midnight, and I'm driving kids out to villages that I had no idea where I was going, right? And it's dark because they didn't have everything wasn't electrified back then, so it's dark out there, going down towards San Miguel and out. And then off on some dirt road, and I'm saying, "Are we going right?" Oh yeah, and then they're telling stories about ghost stories and stuff like that, trying to get me scared. So that class really did. They kind of, I don't know. They
put you under their wing.
They put me under their wing a little bit. Yeah, they did, and so then the second year wasn't nearly as hard because they had set up a roadmap for me. I don't know if they really know that, but now I'm telling them that's the case. That is that they really. I don't know if I would have had any other class as a senior class that year, I might have bailed on being senior class advisor, and that would have changed everything. Because really, that was being senior class advisor was hard. It was really hard work, but it was the biggest payoff at the end of the year.
Yeah. Spending time.
It was the payoff. Well, graduation was the best day of the year.
Yeah.
You know, and so having that happen and having it all come together and watching them graduate, you know, those were, I don't know what they, you know, I know that they have trouble sometimes getting people now to be senior class advisor, and I don't know why, because that's the best. That was
maybe
the best.
Maybe they don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not. They think the work versus the payoff.
Yeah. And you did trips too, right? Like senior trips. Like, were you invited on those?
Yeah. If it was,
he was the man.
If it was school sponsored, I had to go. So, and in fact, I drove the bus a lot of times on the senior class. There were.
You never got to break. You never got to chill. You know?
There was one trip where because we didn't have much money, right? The district paid for the bus, so they had the transportation, but we didn't have any money for a hotel. You know, we barely had enough money to get into Disneyland or wherever we were going. And we left at like 9 o'clock at night, drove all night, got into Magic Mountain or whatever, spent the whole day at Magic Mountain, and then drove home.
Oof.
And I don't know. There were, you know, I wasn't the only driver. There was usually one other driver at least, so we could.
Nice. Okay.
So,
I was like, wow.
I don't think I couldn't have done that.
You would have been sleeping on a roller coaster.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, I usually did go on trips like that. I would leave the park and go sleep in the bus for a while just because I was tired.
Yeah, I bet.
So, but yeah, senior trips were fun.
All right, so just out of curiosity, do you remember where the class of 80 went? Like your first time? What did you guys do?
That was actually a big senior trip. We went to Universal Studios, and we went to Magic Mountain, and I think we might have gone to Knott's Berry Farm as well.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's big.
It was a long trip. It was a long senior trip, yeah. And we had rented a bus for that. I didn't drive on that trip.
That was a good call.
That was a rent. Well, it was my first year. They arranged it. They went. You know, they got the money for doing everything, and we were able to do that.
Wow,
nice.
So,
all right. At this point, so that was your first year, and you mentioned getting to the third year. Like, what was your experience like with the parents?
I always felt like I got along pretty well with the parents, and that parents responded well to me. If I was, if there was a problem with a student, I felt like I could call parents most of the time and get some, help. And if a student wasn't doing well, and we had a parent conference, I always tried to be able to show, well, look, here's the problem. We've had these assignments. They haven't turned in anything. They're tardy all the time. This and that. Mm-hmm. So in general, that's a hard question, because there may have been times that I just don't. I don't usually remember bad things.
Nice.
I don't.
Probably better.
I don't.
Yeah.
A great example is I used to. 7th and 8th grade teachers used to send their students to me for if they needed to be taken out of the class.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so anytime a middle school student was sent to me, I made them stand over in the corner and hold an encyclopedia on their heads, right? and I to this day, I'll have, going out to the if I'm going out there for a graduation or something, I'll have kids come up to me and say, "Hey, Danloe, you remember that one time when I was in your class, I was in 7th grade, and you made me stand up in the corner with a book on my head?" No, I mean, I don't. I do remember doing that, but I don't remember that happening to you. And usually it didn't happen more than once. There weren't once in a while I'd get repeat offenders, but and it was especially bad if they came into a class that was juniors or seniors, because the juniors and seniors would razz them about.
They
didn't want to be. You're a 7th grader.
Young kid, yeah.
So
that's probably more of the torture than the book itself.
I didn't make them balance the book, but they had
awkward kid in front of older kids.
Yeah. So I don't know if you get in trouble for doing that today or not. I mean,
I'm curious.
I don't know. But it worked. Usually people didn't come back.
No repeat offenders, or maybe a few.
And I would always, when the period ended, and they were going out, I would say, "Tell me why you got sent here. Why are you here?" And if they said, "I don't know," then I'd keep them for another period because they knew. They knew. And they would say, "Well, I was whatever. I was late to class or whatever the reason was." I'd say, "So what can you do to not get sent back here again?" And if they had to tell me don't be late for class. Don't talk back to the teacher, whatever. Otherwise, it doesn't do any good to just send them out without them knowing that it's going to happen again.
I can appreciate that in a teacher. Probably not when I was staring down the head in the class, but I could definitely see there's a lot of things I look back on and go, man. Most of the time I'm like, man, I'm an idiot. Why was I doing that? Why was I just a smart ass, mouthing off there? But like in the moment, it's like, I'm tough, I'm hot shit or whatever. Like this is, I'm gonna do this. But in retrospect, I think you get older, you start looking back, and you go, well, I actually like some teachers more than I ever thought I did, and it was because something like that, some off interaction that at the time didn't click. It didn't, or I dismissed it. I'll probably never go to that class again or whatever. But it would be like, all right, this is nothing. This meant nothing. And then later on, it's like, I'm glad they did that.
Well, life goes on, and you're at the other end of the perspective, and it's like,
You don't appreciate till you're old enough to appreciate it, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I was gonna say,
can I top it off?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I didn't get to have you as a teacher, but I heard a lot of stories from you because my mom you were her favorite teacher, and
can I top you off?
And it was always, Danloe, we went on these trips.
Yeah.
And Danloe was so cool, and just, her and her upbringing, and then even how she became a teacher way later, it's just, you're a big part of that. And I did ask her, I was like, we're interviewing Danloe, and you got anything that you would ask him or in mentioning? And she always talks about the Grand Canyon trip and stuff, but she was saying, I think the reason why, because she's obsessed with game shows.
Oh.
And she's like, I think Danloe started that because we played a lot of Jeopardy.
We did.
And then I was like, so ask him about the Jeopardy, and I was like, all right.
Anytime I wanted to get ready for a test, we would do, everybody would get into teams, and we would do this thing, it was like Jeopardy. And I think the students really liked it. I think they thought it was fun, and it engaged everybody because, even if one person on the team knew the answer, but I'm not calling on that person, somebody else has to answer. I would let them talk to each other, but the one person that's turn it was had to answer that question. They could get help, and so it was a good way to review. It was fun, and I guess one of the things that we were talking about misconceptions. I think the idea that you always hear that Native American kids are not competitive and they they don't like to stand out or whatever. And I found that to not be true once you got to know the students. They were very competitive, and not only in a game situation, but basketball, basketball and football, and we didn't always have the best teams, but they competed. They they didn't go out there to lose. Nobody got out there to lose. Everybody competed. We had some great cross country teams over the years. We had
runners for sure.
Runners, we had softball and volleyball. The girls' softball and volleyball teams under Galen Payton. Man, they were wonderful. So so I think that was something, and that it was a prejudice that I had because I had heard that, and then once I got there, I found out that's bull. These students, or that they're all quiet, and they were quiet the first few days because make me talk, I guess. I think, but I don't think that was any different than my Anglo students at Sabino. They just you're going to have to make me do something. But then once you got to know everybody, it was fun. Everybody has great senses of humor and willing to laugh, and I don't know. I think laughing is the best thing that you could have in the classroom too.
I think we've said a few times on more than a few times on the podcast that I'm speaking for the tribe here, is that humor is a big part of the Tohono O'odham culture, and I kind of think it has to do with being able to survive hard traumas. Our history is attached to a lot of darkness, and if you let that consume you, then you'll be ruined. So I think as a survival tactic, our tribe, and probably many other tribes, I'm not discounting anybody, but I'm saying that humor is like a superpower. It keeps us going. And I always found whenever I'm with natives or TOs or whatever, laughter is a big part of it, and it comes out once you all get comfortable. And maybe, it's probably universal, but I like to say it kind of grew through survival, like a necessity for survival.
That could very well be. Speaking of humor, and especially native humor, are you familiar with the movie More Than Fry Bread?
I haven't seen it.
Okay.
I keep talking with it.
So Teresa Choyo was in that, and I remember. I went to the opening of that up at Wild Horse, I think it was, or something.
I didn't know they did that.
The place was packed with all the different tribes were represented. Because the whole show is about different nations.
Who makes the best
fry bread. So, and what was really fun was being in there, and there were jokes that were part of that movie that you had to be T.O. to understand. You had to be Yavapai, or you had to be Apache, you had to be Dene, to understand the joke. And so when a certain joke was told that the Apaches understood, all the Apaches in that group over there were laughing. They were just howling. If it was a T.O. joke, then all the T.O.s,
and the other groups are just kind of
and then some were, everybody got it. Nice. That was a great movie. I watch it. I try to watch it once a year.
I haven't
because
seen it
it's hilarious.
I think we're going to have her on at some point. She seems to be this big character, this personality. We got to have her on.
Character is right.
So moving on here. You mentioned these teachers that told you to get out, and I don't want to go all dark here, but what I want to hear, this is kind of like a two-parter. I want to know what you think makes a successful teacher. What would make you last longer than those teachers that are we got to get the hell out of here? Are there characteristics that you find in good teachers, teachers that are still there, or teachers you worked with versus the ones that, you know, just didn't last, they didn't stick it out? Like, through your experience, what can you say about that?
Well, for one thing, I can't say I could always pick out a teacher that wasn't going to make it, but usually you knew in the first semester if a teacher was going to last or not. Part of it was teachers who came in and you know, they thought that they had something. You know, I've really got something to offer to these people, or I'm going to save these.
Save them, yeah.
You know, and the ones that were those people didn't usually last. They felt, you know, and the ones that did came in, and I really feel that people, like, you know, I said I wasn't going to try to drop too many names here, but like Wesh, Hardy, those people who stayed a long time, and again, see, I'm dropping names, and there's 30 others that did the same, but
well, they're going to come up.
And so those people, in my opinion, you know, you have to ask them, and but I think that they felt that the students had something to offer them. You know, I mean,
Wes said that specifically.
Yeah, I think he did. Yes, yeah. So
I think he said they were teaching him as much as he was teaching them.
Exactly. You know, the families. You know, it got to be more than just, you know, students. It was, you got involved with their families. There was, you know, if there was a funeral, you attended, you know, as much as you could. You know, you got to be part of some of those families. You know, some families I graduated 8 or 10 kids out of the same family, and so I don't know. I'm not sure I'm explaining anything very well here. I just feel like the teachers that lasted because they knew that they were getting as much out of the relationship with their students as they put into them. That's what I think. I don't know.
Well, I was going to say, like, there's that, you don't hear that a lot, but it's almost like the teacher teaches and the student listens, but it can go the other way where the student is teaching the teacher, and the teacher is walking away enriched, just as enriched as we think the student should be when they get the education. But it's like, it's not one-sided. It's almost like, it's a beautiful thing, because it's like, like a student can rise and teach the teacher, and but that concept is a little, you don't think of it that way, because you're the kid, you're younger, you're less experienced, so you're not going to do that. So kind of coming in with this, I'm going to save you. So I appreciate that, but I also think that it's like when you're saying, like, going to the funerals, and you're really, it's not just what they say, it takes a village to raise a child. It's almost like it's the whole community involved with the education.
That's true.
And you almost want to have family's blessing too to teach the child. And I'm not to say that that's gone in education, but it's almost like when I see education now, it's like, I'm sending you to school, get what you need there, and there's a separation. But that's not really.
I don't know.
That's not how it's. I mean, it's not how it should be. It's like it involves everybody, the family. So, like, putting in those times, you're really helping the family. It's pretty epic, but I think you almost do it without knowing you're doing it, and then realize, oh, hey, I'm a part of this community.
Yeah.
And that's awesome.
Yeah, it was awesome. Still is, you know, except for COVID screwing things up so bad. You know, I haven't been to any funerals out there for a long time because it's just been too risky.
Yeah. Dang.
You know, a short comment on the teachers. You said, "Oh, I'm going to teach these guys, or I'm going to save them." It's almost like they felt unappreciated when it wasn't like, "Oh, you're so great." Like maybe, "Oh, you're so much above us. Thank you for saving us." If they didn't get that appreciation, then it's like, "Oh, you guys don't get it." You know, I kind of see this like misunderstanding, or maybe preconceived notion that they came in with was poisonous for their entrance into being accepted.
And the other thing, we were talking about humor a little while ago, but the teachers who lasted they were able to go back and forth. The students could make fun of them or whatever, and they knew that it wasn't a personal thing. The kids were just let's razz them a little bit, and if you let that get under your skin, then you're in trouble. Then you're in trouble. But if you don't, if you just laugh, you know,
I like that you said that earlier. You're like, I could laugh at myself. I remember. So I didn't have the fortune to have you as my teacher, but like on that note, I think about Wes, where I would, you know, I mouthed off in his class, but it was because I knew him. Like I grew up with his son. Right. And I had to get, you know, mess with him. But he always had that, like, real sharp wit. And, like, he could razz you right back. You're like, "Oh, you got me. You got me. Okay, I'll shut up. I'll sit down there."
Exactly.
It was good. And another part that I think I'm hearing, and again, like Sky said, you're not even really aware of it, is what I'm hearing is you're putting in time. You're like, "Oh, I didn't get home until 3, or I had to wake up and 3." Like that's. I bring up movies all the time, and I use them as examples, like on Mr. Holland's Opus. Yeah. In the beginning, that bell ring, and he's running home. He's running faster than the kids. You know, he has to get out. He didn't get. You know, it doesn't end when the bell rings. You know, and what I'm hearing from you, like I don't know for sure, but it sounds like I'm hearing it. That you're like, "Oh well, I'm driving. I'm grading papers till 11, waking up at 3, doing more papers, you know, finishing it up." Your education or your commitment to the education did not stop at the door. You took it home with you. You brought it back. And like you said, going to the funerals, that was unpaid time, but there you were doing it, putting in that time for the community, like Sky said, or for those students. And I really appreciate that, and I think that that's a defining quality of a good teacher, a great teacher. So I like when you were saying that, and I don't even know if you were aware of it when you were saying it, but I hear it as the student. It's like, I would want for my kid when he goes to school to have at least one. Like I was lucky enough, we were lucky enough to have several, including you, like there for us, dedicated teaching, and I hope that my kid will have that too, wherever he goes to school. Like I don't know if he'll go to the res, but you know, it's a hope. Like the way maybe we can talk about this next is education is kind of changing. I brought it up about my mom, and I brought it up with Wes. It's like education is getting more geared towards testing now, meeting the standards, standardized testing, statewide, federally, and kind of lesson plans and your own identity as a teacher and what you want to get across kind of goes out the window. It's like, all right, they have to know this, but really, if you were able to run your own classroom the way you want, they would get that and more. Yeah. But I feel like it's changing so much and so focused, almost. You know, they got their blinders on the side, and their view's getting so focused on testing that, you know, it's like PE's out, science or music is out, art is out.
Yeah.
But now they have to do the math. Now it's, I hear even English is starting to get tossed by the wayside. So how do you feel about that as a teacher? How do you feel about the state of education now?
Well, I'm not sure I can answer that question since I've been out of it for so long. I mean, I see what my grandchildren are just, barely getting started. They're second grade and kindergarten. But I don't know what the standards are at this point because I've been out of it for a long time. I will say, to support what you were talking about, when I first started teaching out at Baba Kivri, and at that time there were no real standards, period. You were teaching basically on your own. One of the things I used to do in government class was we would have our own constitutional convention. I would assign the kids would all have to be different players, or people who were at the constitutional convention. They would have to try to find out, what that person would have supported, being from the state that they were from, and stuff like that. And then we would hold a constitutional convention. But that took time. That took like 2 weeks. By the third year, we were starting to get standards that didn't allow for me to take that time, and then it got worse and worse as the years went by. Yeah. And I guess I think that what the goal is out there in standard land is to try to make sure that everybody is being exposed to the same thing, whether that happens or not, I don't know. But
or if that's valuable knowledge, because I think that's where it affects the students, because every student's different and everybody learns different. So if you're all learning the same thing, some of them aren't going to get anything from it because their interests are other places. But there's like that. There's no activities where they're getting to explore those things. Where it's kind of more, let's be creative, or let's think out the box. But I mean, it just seems like teachers are getting pushed more into a corner every year, where it's like, you got to do this, you got to do this. The list is getting longer and longer.
The list is getting long. I think that's true. It did get longer and longer the longer I stayed. And those standards, when they come out, there's always, there's committees that are formed by the state, and there's always people on those committees that have their own little favorite thing that they have. They say, this is, you really need to know about the Federalist Papers, and you need to study not just the Federalist Papers in general, but Federalist number 65 and Federalist paper number, and I don't. It gets to the point where, do you have time to do all those things? So I'm in that sense, I'm glad I'm not teaching anymore.
My mom has said that.
Yeah, it would be really.
Well, what about if you could do it over, would you do anything different, or was there something at Baba where if I had maybe a couple extra years, I would have?
That's a great question.
Threw a crack at that, or or even some
honestly, I'm not sure I would do anything different than I did. I felt like I had a great career out there, and I felt like I was I wasn't always loved, but I was always respected. I honestly, I always felt that I was respected, and there were students that I had that I know didn't care for me. They didn't like the way I taught or ran the class. But what's really interesting is I'll meet some of those students much later in life, and they, it's good. We can talk to each other, and nobody holds any ill feelings about it. It's just at the time, you said you had to be a hard ass sometimes in some of your classes. Well, that's just the way it is. Kids are like that sometimes, and most kids turn into really nice adults when they realize. Most of them do. I haven't run into too many. I can't say that there's any that I've run into that have been nasty to me as adults, even though they might have had to retake my class again, or they didn't graduate because they failed government or whatever.
Yeah.
They had to come back and graduate with the next class. I think what's important is, for me anyway, I tried to set up, here's what I expect. And I knew that everybody could meet those expectations. I believed it.
Yeah.
I honestly believed that all my students could, and I understood that it might take some students a little longer to meet those expectations, but I really believed everybody could meet those expectations. And that's why we did things like going to the Close-Up Foundation in Washington, D.C., and we did model legislature up in Phoenix. And our students we got awards at Baba Kivri, and we're competing with Mesa schools and Tempe schools. And but, when you expect good things of people, they come through for you.
Yes.
And that's, at least I think so. I don't know. I was always proud of our students. Those were some of my best. When I think about things I'm proudest of out at Baba Kivri, the years that we did model legislature and the Close-Up Foundation and things like that, I was always just really proud of the way our students handled themselves and competed in those things. They were great.
I appreciate that. That's nice. Point that back up. Nice. When you keep bringing up those, I'm like, man, like there was when we went through school, I always felt like we didn't have any of the extracurricular stuff, like none of the, like Model UN. That's fantastic. You get to represent. You get to feel, to speak to a wider audience and go, oh, like this is our needs. These are demands. This is what we need to be us, to be a people. Like, and that's maybe that doesn't meet any kind of current standard right now. It's like, oh, that's not important. But really, I think education is not just about what you can, if you can do a math problem, but how you feel about yourself and your community. And like, that's the extra little thing that has gone missing here, is this like shaping a person. That's a teacher's responsibility, is to take these kids and not only show them how to do things, but also how to be, how to act. And like the student that held the dictionary over their head, they had to shape up. And that's not an education thing. That's it is. It's not the standard, but it's the social way of being, and I think that's a big part of education that we don't really acknowledge. Like, it's like, that's not education, but they kind of regulated themselves. The older students razzing the younger one, and they don't want to do that again. That's huge. That's something that would probably affect them later on in their life as an adult. Like, I don't want to go to jail. Or if they go to jail, they don't want to go back. It's like there's simple, fine line, lessons to be learned. And I really do, again, I'll say it again, I appreciate, telling a student that they didn't meet the requirements, they're not going to pass. people have slipped through, you know. And I've had this talk with my mom where she's like, you know, if a kid didn't do the work, if they didn't do what everybody else around them was doing, they didn't pass. And it's a hard truth to accept. Like, it's hard to watch your classmates move on without you, but
might be the motivation.
Where were you?
Might be the motivation you need.
To turn it around. Yeah. And that's the underlying. That's part of education. And I would say a well-rounded education is that they're also shaping a personality, an adult, a young adult. They're showing them a path that's better than what they're doing currently.
Yeah.
And I think it's kind of unacknowledged. So I appreciate what you did. I didn't get to hold a dictionary over my head. I wasn't going for that. But I'm saying, like, it's cool to hear that. I like it. And I would support that for my own kid. And maybe, like you said, I don't know if it'll fly now, but that's one I would keep. I would keep that one for sure. Okay, so the next, I kind of want to go a little philosophical with you and your history. Like you, so how long did you teach?
Let's see, I was out at Baba Kivri from 79 to 2000, and then I left. I took a leave of absence in 2000 because my father-in-law had passed away, and my wife, my wife's family owns several Ace Hardware stores in Tucson. So, and my wife decided she wanted to try to run the stores, you know. And so I took a leave of absence. I said, okay, well, if this is something you want to try to do, let's make it, let's make it happen. And so I took a year off, and what happened was that leave of absence caused me to realize how much I had missed in my own family by working out at Baba Kivri. You know,
that comes up,
and and so I was home, and my kids were older by that time. You know, my youngest was in 6th grade, and my oldest, I think, was a senior in high school, senior in high school. But so all of a sudden, I was the guy who took if the kids were sick, I was home with them. If they had to go to doctors and dentists, I took them. I was a band dad. I got to go to watch my daughter play in all the band stuff. I got to go to all the all the stuff that I had missed. I missed a lot of stuff by working out there, and I'm not I'm not saying I wish I wouldn't have. I wouldn't change anything, but that year that I was off made me realize how many things I had missed with my own family, being able to go on field trips with the kids and stuff like that. And so when the end of the year was coming,
there you go.
When the end of the year was coming, it still sounds kind of. And I had to tell the district whether I was coming back or not. You know, my wife and I talked, and I said, I've really enjoyed being home. And she said, well, I've enjoyed having you home. I was doing the meals and stuff like that, and so I decided not to go back. And part of it may have been influenced by the fact that the school was moving. That was the year that the move happened.
And went even further out, right?
Down to Tapawa. And so I thought, well, this is a good time to just, stop, I guess. And so I didn't come back. And then in 2004, I got a call from the district saying, hey, we really need a social studies teacher. We've had, in the first 2 weeks of school, we've had 3 different teachers come in and quit. And so I I decided at that point I only had one left in high school, so the others were in college, and so I thought, okay, well, I'll come back. And I came back, but just suffice to say, nothing had changed with the students. The students were as great as I remembered them, but administratively, the district was really screwed up, and I couldn't get a contract. They were this superintendent at the time was interpreting the law in a way that no one else in the state did, and so I decided, I decided not to stay, and that was the hardest thing. I've never walked away from a job ever, but I felt that the teachers, the new hires, were being treated badly, and I feel like the class of 2005, which is the one that was that year, that's your class.
Yeah,
that's your class guy. I felt like they kind of felt like I walked out on them, and I felt really bad about that. I felt really, really bad about that. But I also felt that I was making a stand that, Anyway, long story short, in November I get a call from the district, and they want me to come back. And I said, well, what's changed? And they had gotten rid of the superintendent. And the superintendent was coming in. And I said, okay, I'll come back at the beginning of the semester. And I finished out that year and graduated the class of 2005, and then things were changing with my wife's business, and
there you go.
I decided that we were putting in a new store, and I decided that it'd be more helpful for me to help the family, so I didn't come back. So 2005 was my last year of teaching, but I helped the next year. I think Hardy did he leave? I don't remember what year he left, but
I left the next year.
I think he did.
The year after.
Anyway, the teacher that was the senior class advisor that year called me and asked if I would come out and help. And so I did, and then so that went on from 2006 all the way up until 2019. I came back every year, and that was so much fun. So this is the weird part, because so here I am. I'm just this old white guy coming out. The class of 2012 doesn't know who I am. They've never had me as a teacher, or 2015 or 2016, and yet they let me come out and walk them through graduation practice and say, here's the way these are the things that are going to happen, and here's how it's going to go. And they all did it, and nobody said, screw you, who are you? And I think, and it was wonderful. I mean, I loved going out and doing that every year. It was really great. And I think the reason why they let me do it, and when I say they, I mean the class. The administration can say, yeah, come out and do it, but it won't work if the class won't let you do it. It's about the students. It's about those seniors saying, okay, we'll let this guy come in.
Yeah.
And I think it was because everybody in that class had an auntie or a dad or a grandma who had Steve Danloe as a teacher. I think that's the only thing I can figure out, because nobody, the graduations all went really smooth. I'd just come out for that day before, and then we'd do graduation night, and it would all go great. And it was something it felt good. It felt good. So, but again, that's another a casualty of COVID. There hasn't been a graduation since 2019, and I don't know. Anyway.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
I was going to say that if you did it, and I was like, I bet they had relatives that are like, you better, Danloe's cool, you better shape up for him. I was going to say it if you did it.
I think that's what it was. And it's been fun, going out and, as I'm lining up the students and stuff, there's people going by, hey, Danloe, you know. And so, yeah, it's fun to get to see everybody.
Yeah. That's real nice. Let me mess with that real quick. Yeah. I think that's it. All right. Let's see here. Unless Sky's got something, I'm gonna go further on.
Well, I didn't know you played guitar.
I started playing when I was in college. I never became a very good guitar player, but I did like to play. That's been another casualty of COVID. I don't know. I haven't played in a long time.
Really?
Yeah. Some people during COVID they started playing more.
I was going to say that.
Yeah.
I don't know. I haven't played for a long time.
Well, we're gonna have to set something up.
Yeah, I know.
The three of us.
I'm probably gonna forget how to. Yeah. And the stuff I play is just stuff that I like. I like Jackson Brown, and I like Gordon Lightfoot and Bob Dylan. That's the kind of stuff I play. So it's not. I like music with a message, and those guys. I like ballads and stuff like that.
Nice.
So
Okay.
yeah, I do. I did play guitar. Maybe I'll get back to it.
Well, it wasn't something you share with the students. It was just kind of to yourself, or
No, actually, the class of '80, I was supposed to play. We May Never Pass This Way Again by Seals and Crofts. I was supposed to play that at the graduation ceremony, but whoever was moving things along forgot, and I didn't get to play, which was a good thing, because I didn't feel like I was going to do a very good job of it. But sometimes I take my guitar on the bus on the senior trips and stuff like that. But and I think I played guitar at over the years for graduation. Some classes said, Danloe, do you want to be the guest speaker? And I'd always say, no, I don't. This is, maybe when I'm gone, some class can ask me to come back, but you guys should get somebody other than, So the year after I left, your sister's class asked me to come back and be the motivational speaker or inspirational speaker. And I was really proud and touched that they wanted me to come back and do that. And I think I played a song that I had written actually at that ceremony. So, but yeah, other than that, no, I didn't play at school or anything. And I can't read a note of music. I don't know how to read music.
That seems kind of happens with guitar players. Yeah. Like you can learn it without knowing notes.
I just beat the chords,
All right, so I'd kind of like to go into like a storytelling mode here.
Okay.
And I'm having trouble figuring out which direction I want to go. Like you brought up the administration, and I kind of want to hear like behind the scenes teacher experiences, but I also want to ask. We talked about Wes's experience about him looking out the left side of the window and he was making 3 right turns because of the lady that was breastfeeding in the pasture. So like, and the way we set it up was, I think it was like the strangest experience you had while teaching on the reservation. Like, is there anything that like?
Yeah, I got a couple of good stories from. I'm getting a cramp in my leg. There was, I think it was the 3rd year that I was out there, and Mike Ryan was the superintendent. I think it was his first year as superintendent out there, and we had a huge monsoon storm I think it must have been late August, early September. And he, the roof leaked it was that old administration building that we were talking about earlier, and got all the files got wet, everything official got soaked. So Mr. Ryan had the secretaries put everything out on, plywood or something to dry out.
No.
And so what happens? The cows come.
Oh no.
And the cows are eating all the official documents. and so he had to explain to the state why certain important documents had disappeared. God. The cows ate them. Where else is that going to happen? So that's a story I'll never forget. And then there were lots of commuting stories. We had back before they fixed the road, there were all the dips in the road, and so anytime it rained, you could get stuck.
Yeah.
There were times that we got stuck in between the dips out at Ryan Field because those washes would really run. But we had a couple of different buses over the years, and one of them was a bus that it was, even though they denied it, it was a prison bus. It was a prison bus. It had, bars on the windows, had a cage for the driver, sat in a cage, and the back door could only be opened I had a lever that you could open
all the way at the front?
Yeah, all the way at the front. I had a lever to open the back door if it had to be open. But and it was Border Patrol green inside. So anyway, they eventually took the bars off the windows and stuff like that. But it had a toilet originally in it. And they took the toilet out because it didn't work. It would be bad to use it. And they just had a plywood board across the hole back there. And so if the bus was really full, and some days it was, people would just sit back there across the back seat with the board on it. Well, we were headed home one night, and there was a big storm, and it was right around the turnoff to San Pedro, I think. There was a dip, and I hit that dip, and it was running, and I hit that dip at 55 miles an hour, and I heard a scream in the back, and one of the teachers was sitting on the thing, and water came flying up through the toilet hole, and she goes up in the air like this, like a geyser, and then all this water comes flying toward the front of the bus. It's like a tidal wave, and people had their purses on the floor and their books on the floor, and all this stuff comes. It looked like a tsunami, with all this debris coming, and it went down into by the door, the well, the door well, and just sat there, and filled up with water, and I had to pull over and open the door to let the water out and collect everybody's stuff. But that poor teacher, man, she was wet. She was wet.
Luckily, you guys are leaving, right?
Yeah, it was on the way home.
Jeez.
Yeah. The only bad things that ever happened in the morning on the way to work were that same bus had a problem with the linkage. Like the gear shift would just jam up. It would just jam up. And so I'd have to pull over and get under the bus and shake the linkage. And to get it to be able to shift again. But stuff like that would make us late, and there was another time where we were 5 or 6 miles out from getting to the high school, and I could see there were people behind me. I'm driving, I'm looking in my side mirror, I can see the cars behind me are going like this, and there's pieces coming off the bus.
Oh.
And what had happened was they had taken the air conditioner wasn't working, and so they took it in to have it fixed, and they apparently put in a new compressor, but they didn't bolt it down.
Jeez.
And so it's, doing this, and goes into the fan. And chops pieces out. And so there's pieces of compressor flying out the back of the bus, and the cars are trying to stay out of the way. And I called in and I said, I called into transportation. I said, hey, we got a problem with the bus. There's pieces coming out the back. I said, what do you want me to do? And I can't remember the whoever was in charge of transportation at that time says, drive it in. Yeah, I did. I drove it in. But those were commuter. We tended to break down more on the way home, and if we broke down on the way home, teachers would just bail out of the bus and start hitchhiking.
No.
Yeah, they would just get out and start hitchhiking because they didn't want to wait for. And I'd be stuck with the bus till they could send another bus or get somebody out there to fix it.
Jeez.
Yeah. Most of my stories have to do with the bus.
What about experiences with the teachers? Was there like a great triumph, like maybe a student that turned it around, or like maybe a teacher that you wrote off like they're not going to do it, and then turns out they became a better teacher? Like, do you remember anything like that?
I don't know specifically. I can't say that, but I do know that the best years, in my opinion, when I was out there, of the 22 years I was there, the best years tended to be from about 1985 to 95. That 10-year period, I think, was the best. And I think what made it the best was the stability that we had on the staff. Virgil and Sharon Walker were there. Sharon was the principal. And we weren't flipping teachers. We had the same, pretty much the same staff for 10 years. And I've always believed that you're much better off having a mediocre teacher stay for 10 years than have a good teacher or a great teacher stay there for 2 years and be gone. I just think I don't think that's good for the students. I think. I think those were the best years out there. We got a lot of awards and stuff, recognition. I liked it because for about a 3 or 4 year period, I had the sophomores for Arizona and O'odham history, and I would have them for a semester, and then I had the juniors for U.S. history, and then the seniors for U.S. government, Arizona government, and so I had a curriculum that went from sophomore year all the way through senior year that I could say, now remember last year when we talked about this, and build on that. It was so awesome to be able to do that. And,
the only way you can do that is put in that time. So you can't just do it the first year. It takes some time.
Well, right. And the nice thing was I was able to keep building on stuff from the year before. But that didn't last after a few years. Requirements changed and, stuff like that. So. But I really enjoyed those years when I had. The continuity was made for really fun, complete teaching of U.S. history and O'odham history and Arizona history and government. It was great. There was something else I was going to say, but now I can't remember. Something about.
Well, I asked also about triumph or like a turnaround.
Well, there were always students that, somebody would end up having a baby in the, middle of the year, which is a real, a happy occasion for them, but really tough to be. You're not only away from school to have that happen, but then you also. Your life is disrupted, and some girls just waited, and then they would get behind and come back and whatever. And then there were others that, we would send work home, and they kept up with it, and, that was, if they graduated on time, that was a triumph. It really was. That was, I think those were things that I remember the most. Just without naming names.
Was there I guess like your commute and then during your curriculum and everything you're teaching, did you have like a solid, like I don't want to say like a best friend, but like a solid person that you could kind of talk with at the school during those times?
I'm really glad you brought that up. Along with that period of time, once Mike Hardy came, he ended up taking the seniors for English, and I had the seniors for government, and we came up with a deal where you had to do a term paper that counted for both English and government, and it included all the social studies essential skills, that's what we called them at that time, and the English essential skills. So he would do the English part and making sure that all the grammar and all that stuff was right, and I would do the content, and I would grade the content. And it was something that, as a senior, for 10 years, while Hardy and I were there together, you knew that was coming. And I think it was really good. I think it was Hardy and I got along really well, so we were able to cooperate on that, and I think I also think that students, even though there was a lot of trepidation, there was a lot of fear about that, when they got it done, they were really proud. I got my paper done. Here it is, Danloe. And of course, then I would spend Christmas grading all those papers and then handing them off. I remember Hardy and I meeting at a coffee shop, during Christmas break, and I'd give him half of them, and he'd give me the half that he graded.
Nice.
But it was that was a really good cooperative thing that we did. And then there were other teachers that we socialized a lot. Yeah. We really did. It was fun. There were, and even though I didn't know all the teachers at the elementary necessarily or at Tapawa, we still we saw each other on the bus. And we would, I don't know. I was really lucky to work with the people I worked with.
Cool. Did Hardy ride the bus?
Hardy did, yeah.
Okay. I just remember his truck, but I didn't...
Well, sometimes he would drive, but...
the little pickup? Yeah.
Oh, and before I forget, I talked to Hardy today, and he wanted me to say he thinks about all the people that he worked with all the time, and he wanted me to give a big shout-out to all of his ex-students on the res.
He'll get his shot to say it. Okay. I'm gonna give you the shot too right now, but I wanted to say along the lines of you guys socializing outside of school, without naming any names. Did you have any kind of crazy story of you guys meeting to if you can say without naming names here?
Well, let's see. For quite a few years at my house, we would have on the last day of when we got done for Christmas break, I would have a big party at the house, and people would we'd have a lot of people there and a keg of beer and
that's what I wanted to hear.
That's what I wanted to hear. Yeah, we had a keg of beer and that wouldn't last very long. But,
damn.
So we had fun together. Occasionally, we'd meet, on a Friday night in town and have drinks. Or we sometimes after an event out at, like when we do the we'd try to raise money for the awards. For we gave they don't do that anymore. Academic awards.
Cool.
And so we would do we called it the Teacher Follies, and we put on a big show. It was really fun. We had fun doing that. Some crazy shows, and then we'd gather afterwards and stay up till midnight and then or later sometimes. So I remember there was one, I don't remember what year it was, but I must have been a lot younger. I remember going out, I don't remember where, I don't know if I was staying at Wesh's, and I don't remember, the party wasn't at his house, it was at somebody else's. I remember walking out the door, because I was going to go back over to his house and crash for an hour or something, and I got hit by a newspaper because the guy was delivering the newspaper.
Oh, so barely.
So anyway, but we had fun together too. Yeah, it was
good. I like to hear that. It's kind of behind the scenes. The students, I know students are going to be listening. Probably other teachers.
Students knew they knew what was going on. And nobody. I never socialized with the students like that.
That's fine.
I didn't think it was appropriate. But
all right. Do you have any more questions? Because I'm ready to wrap this up on something. But do you have anything else before we do that?
No. I mean, I just want to thank you again for coming and sharing some of the story. I would probably got to have you back because I think you're going to listen to this and remember a lot of the stuff that happened, because 22 years out there, I mean, that's a long time.
It is.
I mean, the first day to the last day, all those days are just kind of blended in. So,
well, we could come back and just go through the pictures of this album here and
just do a little slideshow.
Well, you have till Wednesday, and I'll take whatever pictures you want, and I'll do my best to line them up, and we'll display them.
Okay.
So to close this out, I did this with Wes, and I think I'm going to do it with Hardy. I see this as like a time capsule, this podcast, and I figure our kids will come back and say, who was Steve Danloe? And I kind of want you to say just a couple words to this is going to be a three-parter. I want you to say, some final words to your students, final words to your coworkers, and then maybe some final words to your family, like you said, there was trying times where you missed us. So maybe there's something you want to say about it. And maybe to your grandkids, whatever. So starting off, your students, do you have some final words to say to them on this episode?
Well, I mean, I honestly look back at my career as, a high point of my life. It really was.
Yes.
And I think the thing I would like to say to my students is thank you for being such a important, integral part of my life. And that you, I'm talking to you guys too, right?
Yeah.
Even though you weren't my students technically, you continue to make me the person that I am, and you continue to. I just love that my students still like to see me, and I like to be seen. So I just want to say thanks for a great career and for the friendship that I've developed. You know, my students, they're not my students anymore. And by the way, please don't be afraid to call me Steve. And I know that's hard. You know, there's a few students that say, "Nope, can't do it. Can't do it, Mr. Danloe."
Mr. Danloe.
And as far as my coworkers go, I was really blessed to have the best group of coworkers. You know, there were times when things would be going on, and the only way you would get through. I remember when the AIDS epidemic hit, and the first student that we lost out there for that, and that was a hard thing for us as a faculty to, you know, realize this was an epidemic that could really harm our students. Also, going through things as simple as North Central accreditation, you know, that takes a lot of work to go through that kind of stuff. And people, they always pulled together. I really appreciated that the administration during those really good years, you know, like with Sharon Walker and Mike Ryan, let us do. You know, they let us do what we did best, and they guided us rather than telling us what we had to do. And you know, speaking of that, I had most of the principals that we had out there were men, and I've got to say that it's much easier to work for a man than a woman. But having said that, we got a lot more done when we had women principals than we did with men while I was there. So, and I appreciate that. That, you know, I always felt that my coworkers supported me. I always felt that the administration supported me, and that made the job a lot easier. My family never, you know, my poor wife, I missed, our anniversary is on May 27th. And right at graduation. I can't tell you how many graduations, how many anniversaries I missed because of graduations. And, you know, she put up with it, and, you know, my kids put up with it. So my family let me live the dream that I guess I got to live. I guess those are the shout outs that I've got to students and staff and family. I really value the relationships I've had with students and their families out there, and continue to have. So thanks for inviting me, guys.
Absolutely.
You're
welcome.
Well, I wouldn't mind coming back again.
Great.
Doing some. I mean, like I say, some of the pictures and stuff in here, we could talk. You know, you're asking me about stories. Well, sometimes I need prompts. If I see a picture, I remember. You know what? On this trip, I remember. But I just can't otherwise. My memory isn't that good.
Wes kind of said the same thing. It's just like, I'd love to tell you a story, but I can't just dive off.
With Wes, and he was there for 40 years, I think. Amazing.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, we're really glad to have you here, and I'm gonna get right on this. And like I said, Wednesday is like when I'm gonna start slapping it all together. So any images you want to share, we'll love to have them. I'm really glad you came. Yeah. I think a lot of this has been really interesting, and I like to see that teachers don't always start out being teachers and then they become teachers. So it was very cool to follow you through this.
Yeah, it was kind of a winding road for me. I really didn't decide to become a teacher until right at the end. right at the end. And boy, what a good decision that was.
Oh, yeah.
We're glad that we had to share in that. I'm sure there's plenty of people that will get to listen to this, or somebody will hear it and go, you put a smile on their face.
I hope
Thank
so.
you.
You could have been in the forest.
Yeah. Yeah. We didn't even talk about fishing.
Oh, yeah. I saw your image. You're gonna have to come back. You're gonna have to come back. Your photo from Facebook. I've only ever seen it as the tiny little picture. Yeah. So to see the full picture, I was like, oh man, it looks like you're having a hell of a time.
I go out in my float tube. I love float tubing.
It looks awesome.
It's fun.
So come back on. We'll just talk about that.
Okay.
You're more than a teacher too. You
talk about fishing on the res. I actually have fished I fished Big Pond a couple of times.
Yeah.
1980.
I didn't. There you go.
Yeah.
I didn't know they stopped it.
Some walls they throw fish in there.
I caught bluegills about this big, 2 inches long up at Big Pond.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you for listening, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this as much as I did, and hopefully you'll be coming back and we'll have another episode with him. So thanks for tuning in. Thank you, Danloe, for coming on.
Thanks for inviting
Steve. Ask his questions.
Yeah.
Have more questions for Danloe?
That's a good point. If anybody has questions for him, I'm sure we can get them to him and even get them answered. So comment. Do whatever you got to do, and I'm sure we'll pass it along.
What did we leave out? What did we forget about the history of Danloe?
I'll come back again.
Or just send some love, Danloe's way. Steve.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
So bye, everybody.
Goodbye.
Peace.